South Jersey's official play-by-play home of the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers.
At 0 point would I ever consider not being a fan of the team.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig.
Let's go!
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Josh Hennig.
Yes, Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN after the Phillies disappoint all of us. You had a feeling that maybe, just maybe, they might be able to figure it out last night. And then it felt like it was a Sunday school verse. The rains came down, the Braves' bats came up. The Phillies were in control of that game. Their pitching staff was holding the Braves down. But as soon as the rain came down, when it was done, the Braves came back to life. Disappointing game last night. Now the Phillies make another change to their batting lineup. Another change to their batting order. We will get into all that and more coming up this hour. Plus, UFC 314 is back in action tomorrow night. And I got to tell you guys, we got New Jersey's own Jim Miller, the all-time record holder for most wins in UFC history. He will join us coming up in about 20 minutes from now. We'll get his perspective on where he is in his career. I mean, this guy, he has been in action, Jim Miller, since 2008 when he first joined the UFC. And now, turning 41 years old, he is still competing. He's won 3 of his last 4 fights. We'll ask him, why is he still doing it? What keeps him going? But first, changes again to the Phillies lineup. Now, I will first off start out by saying this. I am not against making lineup changes. I'm not the type of person who says, don't make changes, don't make moves. I'm not that person, okay? I'm not the guy who sits there and says, it has to be this or else. But this tonight, what they are doing in St. Louis, I don't like it at all. As I told you guys last night here on 97.3 ESPN, the reason why I didn't mind what they did putting Bohm at 7 last night, I didn't mind that because what you're doing is you're basically taking a guy who's not hitting well and saying, we can't trust you in this spot. We need you to lower you in the lineup. It's a very simple equation. But what you did with this lineup screams, we are running out of ideas. We are running out of options. And while, yes, I do give credit to the texter who texted Mike Gill on the Sports Bash earlier today for predicting this as an option for the lineup, it doesn't mean I like it. Because there's one massive flaw in this lineup as currently constructed. And that is Stott as the leadoff hitter. Let me read you Bryson Stott's stats as a leadoff hitter. Okay? Just to verify for all of you who have advocated for this guy to be a leadoff hitter. Bryson Stott has 54 games as a leadoff hitter before tonight's game, with a .253 batting average and a .294 on base percentage. His best spot in the lineup, where he has 92 starts, so almost 40 more in another spot than the leadoff hitter. 92 starts, he has a .308 batting average with a .359 on base percentage. So this is not just a spot with not good history for Stott, but Bryson Stott hits way better lower in the lineup. So number one, the stats tell you this is a bad idea. Number two, when you turn over the lineup, right? Remember, the leadoff hitter is only the leadoff hitter for the beginning of the game, not for the rest of the game, just the beginning of the game. Because of that, what happens when Bryson Stott has to come up and Marchand got on base? What if you have 2 men on and 2 out, and Bryson Stott has to come to the plate instead of Turner, Schwarber, or Harper? I'm certainly not getting excited. I'm certainly not being like, let's go Stott, drive in those runs. You have a history of delivering these situations. Because he doesn't. See, the problem with the debate around the leadoff hitter is a lot of people look at the leadoff hitter the completely wrong way. People get so focused on the start of the game and not the rest of the game. 9th inning. Let's say you have bases loaded in 2 outs. Here comes Bryson Stott. No one is jumping up and down and getting excited about that. No one is saying, here we go. Because this is where numbers don't tell the whole story. While Stott has been hitting well statistically this year, visually, if you use your eyeballs, right? If you watch the games and don't just read box scores, then you will know that Bryson Stott has been lucky for half of his hits this year. These are not hard hit balls. He's not hitting home runs left and right. He is a player who has been hitting balls at the middle, getting it through the hole, dropping in a blooper. He's not a guy who's going up to the plate and dominating at bats. Now, does he have the potential to be a guy who works the count, sees a lot of pitches? Absolutely. But the fact that this organization is basically indirectly telling you we did not plan for a scenario where Trey Turner would underwhelm, Alec Boehm would be hitting horrible, and Nick Castellanos would go 0 for 5 in the 4-hole in Atlanta. And we've gotten to the point where our 2 best hitters, Harper and Schwarber, half the time have nobody on base ahead of them. The organization did not plan for this. They did not expect this to happen. That is why they're in the predicament they're in. They did not plan for success. They said, we're just going to keep running it back because we have faith in our guys. Well, your faith was in the wrong guys, obviously. That's what I think. I want to hear what you guys have to say. 609-403-0973. Your DMs into 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. And by the way, if you're listening in for your next chance to qualify for the Eagles draft party contest, that is coming up in about 30 minutes from now. But right now, let's get to what you guys have to say. Phillies starting lineup again tonight is leadoff hitter Stott, Turner 2, Harper 3. Schwarber is behind Harper in the 4 spot. Castellanos 5, Kepler 6. Boehm stays in the 7 spot as he was last night in Atlanta. Brandon Marsh 8 and Rafael Marchand 9. Now you might be asking, why is Marchand getting the start tonight? Well, it's for 2 reasons. One, because the Phillies went into extra innings last night and didn't get into St. Louis till after 4 a.m. So you could argue they're having a bit of a rough turnaround here. You don't want to overextend your mid-30s catcher. Number 2, the games on Saturday and Sunday are both at the same time. They're both in the afternoon. So now you have Real Muto saved for Saturday and Sunday. That move, I don't mind. It makes sense. It's a very baseball logical move. Text board Shaner in EHT chimes in and says, Josh, this is a sign that we are getting too desperate too fast. I am worried about left field more than anything. Kepler is not working out. Marsh and Bohm, I do not think will come around, says Shaner in EHT. However, it's too much too fast. He is not that guy. Why is not Kyle in the leadoff hitter? Maybe he should be in left field. Shaner says he thinks the lineup should be Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Castellanos, Bohm, Stott, and then who cares? I'd rather try that. That's from Shaner in EHT. Well, a couple of things. Number one, I think the organization knows that Schwarber works well in the leadoff spot. But I think they also understand that they need protection behind Bryce Harper. And they were hoping that guys like Castellanos and Bohm could be that protection. And both guys have just not been able to get the job done. Okay. And I think for Schwarber, he is much more flexible right now doing multiple things. As he explained, he was talking with John Morosi on MLB Network this week about the difference between being a leadoff hitter and hitting in the 4 spot.
I think when you're leading off, right, it's a little bit different than if you're in the 4 hole. There's guys on base, things like that. Situation kind of dictates. But then I think that's more just one at bat, right? When you're leading off, you're just starting the game, nobody on base. That's going to happen. And then throughout the rest of the game, you don't really know what's going to happen. So I think it's only kind of a one bat deal, and then you just go on from there.
I think it's great perspective from Schwarber. It's kind of what I was saying, right? It's the idea that there's only one point in the game where you are the only guy going up there. And you're not going to lead off every inning. So for the majority of the game, you're part of the ebb and flow of the batting lineup. So Schwarber says, look, it's really only one at bat that I'm in this situation. The rest of the game, I'm anticipating people potentially being on base ahead of me. So I think that is the key to all this. I think the key to all this is the leadoff hitter versus the 4 spot. I think it's less important. I think what you said about Marsh and Bohm and Kepler, Shaner and EHT, is the bigger conversation. Bohm, as I detailed last night here on 97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig, hanging out in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios of Atlantic City. I told you guys last night, Bohm, he's striking out too much. He's not walking enough. He's not making a good enough contact. Is it the wrist injury? Is it his mind is in the right place? Has his approach changed? Is his mentality different? I don't know the exact answer to any of that, but I am trying to decipher why a guy who basically was batting around 275 the last 2 years and had 97 RBIs per year and basically struck out less than anyone else on this team is all of a sudden become a guy who can't make contact consistently, strikes out, and can't drive in runs. Marsh, I think it's a failed experiment. I think the Marsh experiment worked out great the first time they got him. 2023, he was fine. Last year, you really started seeing the flaws in the armor. And then this year, I really only think he's on this team because they didn't have a better option. Steven Venter chimes in at 609-403-0973. He says it's worth tinkering early in the season, not for nothing, but Stott sees a lot of pitches per plate appearance. He's an excellent base runner and has enough pop and speed to justify leading off. Phillies try to prioritize protecting Bryce Harper in the lineup. I think the rest of the lineup balances out nicely. Well, you think that. Fine. Here's a problem with the whole he sees a lot of pitches in a plate appearance. As Schwarber said, it's only one at bat you're leading off the game. Stott can't be the guy who is this isn't banana baseball, right? This isn't where like I can send Stott out there to see a lot of pitches every single time a pitcher comes into the game, whether it's starting with the bullpen. So the seeing a lot of pitches thing doesn't mean a lot to me. You can do that anywhere in the lineup. The numbers, the numbers show that he's a better hitter 6. Was he not seeing pitches good there versus elsewhere in the lineup? I don't think so. And again, being an excellent base runner has nothing to do with my issue with the lineup, Steve. My issue with the lineup is when the lineup turns over, and if the guys at the bottom get on base, I don't have a lot of faith in Stott to drive them in. Now, I agree with you. You got to protect Harper, and I am totally on board with that. I'm 100% on board with that. But you're telling me the lineup couldn't have been Turner, Harper, Schwarber? Why does that have to be Stott's top? Why could it be Turner? I think Turner is slowly coming around on this lineup. I think he's slowly getting better. So to me, I think Turner could be in the leadoff spot and we'd be perfectly fine. Andrew in Summers Point says, I don't think it matters a lot of thought on this topic. There's too many things to worry about with this Phillies team than who leads off. Very fair, Andrew in Summers Point. It's very fair. If you want to be the guy who says, hey, listen, the leadoff hitter doesn't matter because the rest of the lineup isn't doing their job, I can totally get on board with that, Andrew Summers Point, because Bowman and Marsh have been, as I mentioned, gross disappointments this year. You have a guy in Nick Castellanos who has been arguably one of the most inconsistent hitters on this team for the last few years. JT Realmuto is not getting any younger. Trey Turner has been underwhelming for the majority of the Phillies' tenure. So you're right. There are much bigger concerns with this lineup. And as Shaner and EHT pointed out, we can point to the Kepler move as the moment we realized that the situation we are in right now is possible. Because when you bring in a player who is a, for lack of a better term, almost a duplicate of other guys in the lineup, you knew that your lineup wasn't balanced enough. The Phillies brought in Max Kepler with the thought that he would be the next bat in the lineup. And he's been a bat in the lineup. That is a huge, huge problem. That is a huge difference for this team. If they would have brought in somebody to play left field who was, for lack of a better term, a little more consistent, a little more reliable than a Max Kepler, okay? You know, Bryce Harper told Ken Rosenthal of The Athletic and Todd Zalecki of MLB.com that if the Phillies would have brought in Pete Alonso, remember Pete Alonso was a free agent and basically until almost the start of spring training, and they would have said, hey, we're going to bring in Pete Alonso, you got to go back to the outfield, and Harper said, fine, I'll do it. You know what Pete Alonso is doing right now? Batting .333 with 3 homers and 15 RBI. Ready for this? A .451 on base percentage. You're telling me if the lineup wasn't Schwarber, Turner, Harper, Alonso, that you wouldn't feel better about this team? Of course you would. And again, that's just one example. And I'm not saying there were tons of options out there. You know, there are a lot of reports that said the Phillies tried to get Kyle Tucker. And the Astros basically said the Astros basically said thanks, but no thanks to the offer, right? So there is that part as well. That let me find the audio real quick because John Middleton brought this up the other day on the Philly Show podcast that at last year's deadline they tried to make big moves, but other teams were not interested. And he was explaining to the question about how much latitude does Dave Dombrowski have to upgrade this team.
This is Dave's call. It's not my call. It's Dave's call. And if you go back, for example, to last year, I mean, we looked hard. We talked to a lot of people. I mean, we pursued certain people very hard. And we made offers that I can't believe people rejected. But they did. And they were so, I won't say excessive, but so generous on our part that Dave and I looked at each other and just said, you know what, we're ambivalent. If a deal comes through, we're okay. If it doesn't go through, we're perfectly fine keeping these players that we've offered.
And I think that is the key to all this. The Phillies have tried to make moves. Now, are they moves that we may have made ourselves? Maybe not. Have they pursued some of the guys that maybe you or I wanted them to go get? Maybe not. But at least they have tried. Let's get George from Summers Point before we hit the break at 609-403-0973. George says, Josh, I agree with you that Stott should not be the leadoff hitter. Also, I am growing increasingly impatient with Alec Boehm. The Phillies lineup, as it currently is, has too many holes on the offensive end. I do not want to push the panic button, but if the Phillies do not sweep the Cardinals this weekend, or at least score 3 to 5 runs a game when they come back to the bank next week, the reception is going to be less than rousing. That's George in Summers Point. Well, a couple things there. One, I don't expect the Phillies to sweep any team. Not because I don't think they're a good team, but because it's hard to win 3 straight games in a series in baseball. Remember, if you win 100 games in a season, you're still losing 62. So under that math, you are theoretically going to not sweep a lot of series. And right now, the Cardinals are a 5-7 baseball team. So they're a 500 team that scores a decent amount of runs. When you break down what are the best offenses in the National League right now, the Cardinals are actually one of them. The Cardinals have scored more runs than the Phillies. In fact, when you go through the entire National League, the St. Louis Cardinals are tied for the second most runs scored in the National League. They're tied with the Arizona Diamondbacks, and they're behind the Chicago Cubs. So don't overlook the Cardinals, Jordan Summers' point. They are a team that is an offensive, danger Will Robinson, danger kind of vibe to it. So don't overlook them. And I think that the question is going to be, how jet-lagged, tired are the Phillies going to be in this game today? Could they lay an egg tonight and then win Saturday and Sunday? It's very much possible. All right, coming up next, New Jersey's own Jim Miller, the all-time winningest fighter in UFC history. He joins me next ahead of his next fight tomorrow night, UFC 314. I'm Josh Hennig, and this is 97.3 ESPN.
For over 135 years, First Bank of Sea Isle City has proudly served Cape May County with a commitment to maintaining a hometown feel. We provide secure, convenient deposit and loan products every day. We're more than just a bank. We're a trusted community partner, offering personalized banking solutions that make life easier for local families of all ages. First Bank of Sea Isle City. Look for our lighthouse in your neighborhood and discover what makes us different.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
This is the story of the one who, as a maintenance specialist for a historic high-rise, knows that vintage charm historically needs constant attention. Which is why when it's time to upgrade turn-of-the-century mechanicals, they turn to Grainger. With easy access to 1 million+ products and the scale to deliver when and where you need them. The right tools and supplies are never far away. So the one can keep that vintage building running like new. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
When you switch to Progressive, you could save bundling your home and auto. Then you could put that money towards some of the surprisingly more expensive things in life.
May I help you? I just wanted to request a late checkout, please. Of course. That's $30 per hour for up to 4 hours. Huh. Okay, but if you can offer a late checkout, then that probably means no one is staying in that room. So if it's empty, maybe I can just stay a few extra hours. Oh, aren't you adorable?
Life costs a lot, so bundle and you could save with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Right now at the Home Depot, shop Spring Black Friday savings up to 35% off select appliances plus free delivery from top brands like Samsung. Get tech you can trust to simplify your daily routines. From all-in-one washer dryers to smart refrigerators with Family Hub. Upgrade your kitchen and laundry with trusted technology from Samsung, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction. Get Spring Black Friday appliance savings and free delivery now at the Home Depot. Visit jdpower.com/awards for more details. Free delivery on appliance purchases of $396 or more. Offer valid April 3rd through April 23rd. U.S. only. See store online for details.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. Aaron Nola getting the start tonight for the Phillies. They start a 3-game set against the St. Louis Cardinals at Busch Stadium. Andre Palante going for the Cardinals. Philadelphia fell to Atlanta Thursday night 4-2. Braves winning it on a walk-off home run from Marcell Ozuna, and the Phillies dropped 2 of 3 in that series. Flyers returning to the ice Saturday, home to face the Islanders. Flyers have won 4 of their last 5 after a victory against the New York Rangers on Wednesday night, where they put up 6 goals in in the third period. The Sixers hosting the Atlanta Hawks tonight. They have 2 games left on the season. Philadelphia will miss the playoffs for the first time since 2017. They're coming off a win Wednesday against the Washington Wizards, snapping a 12-game losing skid. NFL Draft starting on Thursday night, April 24th. Coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles picking 32nd as Super Bowl champs. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
I need new rotors.
When you buy 2 Duralast rotors during our spring sale, you get Duralast brake pads free.
Free?
With the rotors.
Well, that's great. What if I need extra stopping power?
You can upgrade to Duralast Gold pads for just $10.
So Duralast pads are free?
Yep.
And an upgrade is just $10?
That's right. Part of the spring sale at AutoZone.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. Tonight will be wet and windy. Periods of steady to heavy rain likely throughout the night. Low temperature dips to 42 degrees. And tomorrow, clouds and showers will linger throughout the day. It'll be miserably cool with a high of 46. Sunday, the better day of the weekend. A brightening sky, probably dry weather, and warming up to 57. Chance of a shower early and late Monday, high of 63. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
Spring is cranking up in South Jersey, and so is the hiring game. The weather is warming up, and soon, business will be booming. If your business isn't ready, your competition will be. Whether you need a killer crew for the busy season or fresh stars to take your team to the next level, now is the time to make your move. Town Square Media can help you find the right people fast. No stress, no waiting, just the best hires for your business. To learn more, go to townsquaresouthjersey.com. That's townsquaresouthjersey.com.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN. And of course, tomorrow it is UFC 314 and New Jersey's own Jim Miller is back in action. And what's full disclosure for the audience, Jim, is that this is the third time you and I have chatted one-on-one over the years. And, I go back to when you and I were talking before the Atlantic City fight in 2014. And it's crazy that now you are the UFC's all-time wins leader. So for you, like, how crazy is it to look back on your career at this point and be like, wow, man, I just won, basically 3 of my last 4 fights and I'm 41 years old. Like, there's got to be a part of it that's totally surreal for you.
Honestly, it is. I've been thinking about it a lot lately because it's like I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that moving on to something else is going to be difficult. I was able to, I had a support around me with my wife to really dive in. And when I signed with the UFC, it was, you're not making much money at all. Especially back in 2008. Right. But like, I trained my butt off. I was able to make bonuses in my first 2 fights. So like that kind of set me up to where it was a lot easier to become a professional fighter. Right. Like there's a difference between fighting professionally and being a professional fighter. Right. Like, if you're paying your bills like this by stepping into the octagon, that's you are a pro. And I was able to do that. And doing it for so long, it's like, man, like I'm definitely still going to need to do something, right? Like you maybe one UFC fighter has ever made enough to just kind of move on, right? And Connor, but yeah, like I see that. I see the end of my career. Hopefully, if I could stay healthy, I get these last couple fights. We end at 50. And that being like, maybe a year and a half from now, if I can keep the pace up, and then what? So, it's like, I really have been thinking about it and really kind of like looking at the career and like, it's like, man, like, I'm approaching 50 UFC fights. It's wild. It's insane to think about. And, and it's like, okay, what kind of legacy am I leaving behind? And, what do I want to be remembered like as, right? Like how do I want people to remember me as a fighter and the way that I fought? And I feel like there's a little bit of pressure relief because it's like, hey, like after 45 fights, the legacy's set, man. Like all I can do at this point is, maybe change it a little bit, right? And like I can either go out and prove that all those times where I fought my butt off and fought from bell to bell and never stepped away from the fight, never tried to just win on points or by the judges. Like I could either keep that cemented or I could, just, all right, let's just get a couple wins here. And that's not me. That's not who I'm, what I am and what I'm going to do. So like, yeah, like my goal in these last 5 fights is to go out and to fight my kind of fights. And that's be dominant and be violent and, and never stop. And, yeah, like it's kind of a weird spot to be in, to really try to be like breaking it down, like looking at my career at this point.
I totally get that. And it's funny you mentioned about legacy, because I know for someone like me who has been, watching and covering you basically from the beginning of the UFC back in 2008, when you have 28 or 38 wins, are all by finishes, right? Knockouts or submissions. And, when you first came into the sport, your evolution as a fighter from then to now, has there been something that has been a part of that evolution, that growth, that development that maybe you appreciate the most now that you're entering UFC 314 tomorrow night?
There's been a lot. There's been a lot to that evolution, and I feel like that's one of those things that has been a very integral part of me being able to continue on fighting, for so long, right? Like you have to evolve. The game changes all the time. The game from 2008 to now has changed. The game from 2014 to now has changed. In the last 5 years, it's changed. So I have always known that. I've always tried to evolve myself to keep up with it, and also to evolve with my changing body. And I honestly, I'm not one that like I'm not one to really like play the victim and have self-pity, right? Like I've experienced some stuff. I've dealt with some stuff that, yeah, you know what? I wish I hadn't, but it made me who I am. And my battle with Lyme disease affected me negatively. It did, but there are positives from it. I was ranked in before the rankings too, right? Like back before they even had official UFC rankings. I was the top 5 in the world at lightweight. And like I was knocking on the door of an opportunity to fight for the title for a few years there. Had I won that fight in 2014, Donald went on to win it, go fight for the title. Had I beat him in the way that I beat people, I get that title shot. And there was the fight with Benson before that in 2011. There was a fight with Nate that, like, those were opportunities that I had to really cement myself. And unfortunately, I came up short, it's the name of the game, right? Somebody has to. But like, I try to learn from that stuff, and getting Lyme disease and having to go through that, and be one of the best on the planet, and then have your athleticism stolen from you by a tick bite sucks. It really does. And, I was 29 years old when I was bit by the tick. At least I believe when I was bit by the tick that gave me Lyme disease. It was, May or June of 2013. So here I am, a professional athlete, one of the best on the planet. And now my game had to change. Like my style of fighting had to change. Before that, I beat a lot of guys just on grit and pace. Like there were a lot of guys that were very talented that I was able to beat just by stepping on that gas pedal harder than them. And then that was gone. It was taken from me. Like one of my symptoms is that like I couldn't do things that were like anaerobic. Like I couldn't sprint. I couldn't lift heavy. I couldn't do the things that made me one of the best in training. So then I obviously couldn't do them in a fight. So I had to adapt. I had to change the way that I trained and the way that I fought. So honestly, like I think that being a little bit more cerebral about it and trying to work through Lyme disease, honestly, is one of those things that really has helped me get to this point, to be able to be 41 years old and looking at my 46th UFC fight, have the records for the fights and the wins and this and that. Like that wouldn't have happened. That honestly, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't gone through that very difficult and dark period, in my life and career.
Talking with New Jersey's Jim Miller, of course, at Jim Miller _155 on the X platform and Instagram. Of course, UFC 314 tomorrow night. You can catch him taking on Chase Hooper. Of course, now this is the best part of this conversation, Jim. Okay. Because you're going to be on ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus tomorrow night. And there's like, is there a party that looks around and be like, I'm from New Jersey. I've had this resilience. I've been fighting in the UFC for 15 years. I've endured this Lyme disease. I've overcome all these things. And now my fights are being simulcast on Disney Plus. Like, is there a part of you that looks around and you're like, what is the world I'm even living in right now?
It's pretty crazy. It is pretty crazy to think about where the sport has come, like I fell in love with it. I watched a VHS tape of it right at wrestling camp in 2000, or not even 2000, 1997 or something like that. Right. And it was like, man, that's cool. And like, I have two older brothers and we grew up watching Bloodsport and all these other, cheesy 80s action movies. And I fell in love with it. And then like, as I got older, going to college a bit, like, man, I was watching every card I could, and really just like was so intrigued by it. Hadn't started training yet, but just was a wrestler. But like wrestling is a huge part of the sport, right? So probably was training. But I took a little time from school and was working with my brother and my dad, and we watched one of the pay-per-views, and it was like, man, we got to do this, and it's like started training, and it's like, man, back in that day, the UFC didn't even have a lightweight division. Like, I was like, all right, I'm going to get to the next level, and I'm going to be going to Japan and fighting, and it's like, Dan can get to the UFC because they've got it 185s. And it's like, here we are now where it was like, yeah, you're on Disney Plus. you're on ABC, you're on this, you're on that. Like, I've come through a lot of those like steps, those events and in the growth of the sport. Like the only thing that gets me right is it's like the UFC is mainstream, but the fighters aren't yet. And that's the hang up for me. Right. Is that's like, we're not at that point yet as athletes. Because for so long, particularly in those, in the early 2000s and even before that. Right. But like, man, we got branded so much as the kind of the sideshow, as the freak, as the unpredictable athlete. Yeah, we're tough and this and that, but it's like, well, they might do this, they might do that. Like they're gonna have a run-in with the law and this and that. And it's like, man, like how many fighters do you have as like wrestling coaches and kids coaches and I mean, fighters we're a little bit crazy. We are. to go in there and to make a living, in the octagon is nuts. It really is. And it's not normal by any stretch of the imagination. But outside the cage, we're just like everybody else for the most part, like we perform highly in violent, personal violence, right? But there are a ton of guys that honestly should be far, far more, I don't know if famous is something that you should really ever strive for, honestly, right? Like rich, not famous is kind of the goal, right? But it's like, there are fighters that are amazing human beings and also super talented athletes that really need to be much more recognized. And honestly, I think that just kind of the way the sport came up is to blame for that. But it was necessary. Like we're here today because of all that stuff. So, but hopefully it gets to that point where, you do have fighters being recognized in the way that athletes from football and baseball and basketball and all the other sports get recognized.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, we wish you the best of luck getting your next UFC win tomorrow night. UFC 314, folks can watch you in the prelims. Again, ESPN, ESPN Plus, and Disney Plus for those who want to jump on that platform. And, you mentioned the good guys, Jim, and I got to say before I let you go, you're one of the good guys because you're someone who has always been honest and upfront with people. Again, I've been covering this for a long time, and I know, when you and I first met in person in 2014, you were always cordial, you were always professional, and I just hope that a lot of other people get more chances to see you before your career ends because, I think that a lot of guys can learn from your example of what you've endured and how you've handled yourself. So, I still want to say, there's a lot of people who appreciate you in New Jersey, that you represent the sport and you represent the state well.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to represent the state and the sport and just, the fighters as well, I understand that there's a lot of eyes on us and, I'm a father of four, so I got four sets that are watching everything I do. And I do it for them.
Jim Miller at Jim Miller _155. 155 is the weight class. That's on X and Instagram where you give him a follow. And again, UFC 314 tomorrow night. Watch the prelims. Jim, appreciate you jumping on. Great conversation.
Thank you very much.
Josh Hennig back in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios on 97.3 ESPN. And just to follow up on that point, Jim talked about how, some of the history of the UFC and mixed martial arts, there is still a little bit of a black cloud that it doesn't hang over the sport, but it tries to hang around the sport because there was a lot of misinformation about the UFC and mixed martial arts and everything back in the 90s. It's been well documented by a lot of people, so I don't need to rehash all the details, but there was a lot of people, specifically politicians, who, because they had money in their pockets from people in other professions and other industries, those people in other professions and industries had a interest in seeing the UFC and MMA fail during their first 15 years of existence, from the early 90s to the mid 2000s. And once mixed martial arts and the UFC was able to endure that initial blitzkrieg of bad publicity and misinformation and lies about the sport, a sport that has had way fewer casualties, way fewer medical issues, way fewer CTE situations than boxing or football, even though it was quantified and qualified as a brutal sport. The people who said that had no understanding of the science or the true information out there. And instead of trying to say, hey, why don't we make all sports safer? Why don't we make all sports better for the athletes? They just wasted all their time and energy and resources on attacking this specific sport. And so, it is guys like Jim Miller and how they carried themselves, how they dealt with the media, how they talked to people, how they interacted. They became symbols of this is not a barbaric sport. This is not a sport that is based on the movie Bloodsport, for example, right? This is something much different, much more. And to me, I think it's important that we celebrate guys like Jim Miller, because guys like Jim Miller are the reason the sport has evolved, progressed, gotten better. All right. I do have some UFC 314 picks for you coming up on the other side. We'll check out back on the text board one more time before we wrap up the hour. 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. But before any of that, first thing, you know that sounder means this is your final opportunity today to qualify for the Eagles draft party. Yes, the Sports Bash with Mike Gill will be live at Ocean Casino Resorts, the Gallery. Thursday, April 24th is your opportunity to win the Eagles tickets club box. But you can't do it unless you're calling number 7 at 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776. Caller number 7. You are in for the Eagles draft party. You can win an overnight stay at Ocean Casino Resort, tickets to shows at Ocean Casino Resort, and much, much more. But you must qualify. Your final chance today. You have no more opportunities until Monday. So call right now, 609-573-3776.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card good for use at Jester's Dive Bar for just $25.
This great deal is on sale now at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
SeizeTheDeal.com. Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
I need new rotors.
When you buy 2 Duralast rotors during our spring sale, you get Duralast brake pads free.
Free?
With the rotors.
Well, that's great. What if I need extra stopping power?
You can upgrade to Duralast Gold pads for just $10.
So Duralast pads are free?
Yep.
And an upgrade is just $10?
That's right. Part of the spring sale at AutoZone.
Get in the zone, AutoZone.
Restrictions apply.
When you're hiring, have you ever felt like you're missing out on meeting truly great candidates for your roles? It seems impossible to find them, but they have to be out there somewhere, right? Well, they're not hard to find when you know where to go, and that place is ZipRecruiter. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day. And because these people are actively looking for jobs just like yours, it's easy to find the right person right away. In fact, 4 out of 5 employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. But if you're not using ZipRecruiter, you're missing out. So see what it's like when the impossible is easy. When you go to ZipRecruiter.com/radio right now to try ZipRecruiter for free. Once again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio. Never miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
Find what you love, love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines.
Only at Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around
to $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code AIRPORT25 to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code AIRPORT25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code AIRPORT25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
What if your limited inventory had unlimited potential? What if your biggest risk was not taking one? What if you could make every move matter? Bank of America's business solutions can help bring your biggest what-ifs within reach. Find out how our digital tools, cutting-edge insights, and trusted expertise can work for your business. What would you like the power to do? Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. Bank of America is proud to be the official bank sponsor of FIFA World Cup 2026.
Right now at the Home Depot, shop Spring Black Friday savings up to 35% off select appliances plus free delivery from top brands like Samsung. Get tech you can trust to simplify your daily routines. From all-in-one washer dryers to smart refrigerators with Family Hub. Upgrade your kitchen and laundry with trusted technology from Samsung, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction. Get Spring Black Friday appliance savings and free delivery now at the Home Depot. Visit jdpower.com/awards for more details. Free delivery on appliance purchases of $396 or more. Offer valid April 3rd through April 23rd. U.S. only. See store online for details.
Hey, Joy. Oh, you are glowing.
Oh, hey. More like Mira joyed that Miralax helped me go. I was so backed up. Tried mega coffees, prune juice, everything. Then Miralax. And hello, gentle relief without the harsh side effects.
Ooh, how does it work?
It works naturally with the water in your body for constipation relief. Find Miralax today at your local retailer.
Use as directed for occasional constipation.
Have you tried hands-free Skechers slip-ins yet? Because if you haven't, you're missing out on technology that changes how you think about shoes. First, these are not just regular slip-on shoes. They're not just a pair of loafers without laces. But what makes them different is the technology inside that lets you just step into them. There's a built-in hidden shoehorn that slides your foot in, so they look, feel, and wear just like a pair of shoes you're used to. Except you don't have to bend down, struggle to put them on, or touch them. Try them at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
Progressive knows you've got enough to worry about in life.
Hi, it's your life again. Feel like another year is just slipping away? Yeah, remember all those New Year's resolutions you made? You still haven't finished the first book. Just 19 more to go. I mean, if we're being honest, it wasn't a very realistic goal. Have you ever considered that you intentionally self-sabotage? So what's that about?
So let Progressive protect your home and auto, because you've got enough to worry about. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers not available in all states.
Want to stay out of the dark the next time a storm hits? Then reach out to Calvi Electric, a certified Generac dealer. From installation to maintenance, they're your go-to experts for Generac generators, ensuring your home stays powered through any storm. A Generac home standby generator will automatically restore power to your home during an outage, so your life goes on uninterrupted. Put your trust in Calvi Electric, the premier electrical contractor serving South Jersey for over 115 years. Visit calvielectric.com today and stay ahead of any storm.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Let's get a couple of things in here before we wrap up the Power Hour known as Game Night. Sixers basketball coming up tonight. They take on the Hawks tonight on 97.3 ESPN. Lee in Bridgeton chimes in. What's up, Lee? Lee says, what a down-to-earth great interview. I felt the passion and truth from Jim Miller. Yeah, you know, Jim is a great person, and I always love the opportunity to let athletes of any sport showcase that they're more than just athletes. You know, these are guys with depth and passion, and they got a lot going on in their lives. So I'm glad you enjoyed it, Lee in Bridgeton. Jim's a great guy, and I hope everyone tunes in tomorrow. ESPN Plus, Disney Plus to see his next fight. He's turning 41 years old, so he's not fighting much longer. You know, he has talked about wanting to get to 50 UFC fights. So we'll see if he actually gets there or not. But definitely. And by the way, he is one of my picks to win tomorrow night. And it's one of those weird things because he's facing a guy in Chase Hooper who is an up-and-coming fighter. He's an up-and-coming prodigy. And I gotta tell you guys, I think Chase is heavily favored because I think people look at his resume and they see that he's beaten some big names. They don't realize that the majority of his wins have been by submission. He is a grappling submission guy. Jim Miller's strength is wrestling and grappling. In fact, I can't even tell you the last time Jim Miller lost a fight to a high-level grappler. All of his losses in recent years have been to strikers, the guys who can, throw down hands. I mean, I just looked it up. He has not lost a fight by submission since 2018. So at plus 675, I'm just saying you throw $5, $10 on it's not a bad deal. And in fact, if you want to maybe play a little extra interesting, you can even bet on the cover, the final score of the fight. Pretty good value. Jim Miller tomorrow. I'm Josh Hennig. This is 97.3 ESPN. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Saturday morning in the locker room with Billy Schwein. Producer Nick Earnshaw joins me in the studio to produce and co-host the show. The Phillies head to St. Louis for a 3-game set after dropping their first series of the year to the Braves. We will analyze the Phillies' play. Hour 2, Mr. Negadelphia, PJ Quarter chimes in with his thoughts on the Phillies, plus his impressions on what direction the Birds, Flyers, and Sixers are going in the draft. Brought to you by the Galloway Pool Service. So tune in to the locker room with Billy Schwein Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to noon on 97.3 ESPN.
All right, Josh Hennig back here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig, where you get the exclusive content you didn't get on the radio. So let's get to it right now. UFC 314, very fascinating fight card for a couple of reasons. And I'll refresh you on the Jim Miller stuff in a minute. But number one, the main event, I think is going to tell us a lot about the future of the UFC. Because for years, Alexander Volkanovski was looking like he was the next big name, basically, the next big stud in MMA. And when he got the opportunity to move up the fight for the lightweight belt, there was a lot of conjecture that he was going to become a 2-division champion. He was going to put his name in the record books and all this stuff. And he lost twice to Makhachev. And then he went on to lose his own belt to Topuria. So he went from being on the top of the world, one of the baddest men on the planet, to being a guy who's lost 3 of his last 4 fights. If he doesn't win tonight, that's right, tomorrow night, at UFC 314, he is going to become a has-been. He is going to become one of those fighters who had a great run, but then had a drop-off. And listen, I don't think Volkanovski is a guy who can't fight anymore. I don't think any of the fights that he lost are like, see, that's why he can't fight anymore. Now, he's 36 years old. Does he still have the same physical explosion to throw down like he used to? Tomorrow night is going to be a matchup that will determine, will he get another chance to fight for the belt? Or is he just going to become another guy on these UFC cards? And he's fighting a younger fighter, Diego Lopez. Lopez has been an up-and-coming guy for years, and a lot of people have been waiting for Lopez to kind of find his way into this contender conversation ever since he debuted on Dana White's Contender Series years ago. Now, he lost that fight, but it was still a fight that was heavily hyped and promoted. A lot of expectations for him going to that fight to Lopez. And Lopez is a guy where, if you actually look at his experience, right, his history as a guy who trains, he is a high-level black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But he has become much more well-rounded as a fighter over the years. So again, you go back to what he was in 2021 and to who he is now. He is a much more well-rounded fighter now. It's the reason why he's on a five-fight winning streak. You could almost guarantee if he wins the fight tomorrow night at UFC 314, he is next in line for the belt. Because he has beaten everyone who is anyone along the way, not named Alexander Volkanovski. One problem, though. Diego Lopez, during this five-fight winning streak, his last two fights, when the competition got tougher, they were all decision victories. That is a huge part of this conversation. Because if you are a fighter who was initially dominant and now all of a sudden you're kind of like barely squeaking by, getting the wins, that is usually a clear sign that somebody somewhere has found a flaw in your game. Look at Volkanovski's losses. They have both been early in the fights. So that means Volkanovski has been training to not lose by an early finish. The play in this fight is over 3.5 rounds. It is not under. But, and I say but, it could still finish before the 5th round. Remember, main events, 5-round affairs. So there is a real possibility that one of these fighters is going to win. And that's why I like the over 3.5 rounds, but I also like the plus 120 for a win by knockout, TKO, or disqualification. Because I think that Volkanovski is going to want to drag this fight out. He is going to want to see if Diego Lopez can handle his style of fighting. Remember, Volkanovski's background is completely different than Diego Lopez. Styles make fights. You always hear me talk about that with sports, right? Volkanovski, what is his background? His background is 3 disciplines: Greco-Roman wrestling, boxing, and Muay Thai. What is Diego Lopez's background? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a little bit of Muay Thai, but not as much as Volkanovski. Volkanovski is the much more powerful fighter. I think Volkanovski thinks that he can keep this fight standing. If he can get Lopez into the later rounds, he can expose him. Because remember, there was a stretch of time when Volkanovski didn't lose a fight from 2013 to 2022. And during that run, he won a lot of fights by decision. He won a lot of fights by dragging guys deep into a fight. And the handful of fights he did win by a knockout or submission. 4th round against Zhang Gangsong. All right. It was Chad Mendez was in the 2nd round, but that was a little different because he kind of ran into something. But most of these fights are decision victories. He drags you late into a fight. He makes it ugly. He breaks you down. And so, to me, I think this fight is going to go a lot longer than Lopez thinks it's going to. And I don't know if Lopez can survive 5 rounds with Volkanovski. But does Volkanovski get risky and let Lopez get a handle on him in the wrestling game? I don't think Volkanovski lets go to the ground. So a decision victory is plus 100. A TKO knockout victory is a pretty heavy favorite as well. Heavy underdog as well. So I like either one of those outcomes for this matchup. The co-main event tomorrow night, UFC 314. I don't think Paddy Pimblett. It's hard for me to say the guy's name. I'm sorry. All right. The guy needs to have a different name. Or I need to get better at pronouncing guys from Ireland's weird names. Look, by the way, he's British. I'm sorry, not Irish. It's a bad job by me. Can't remember the guy's country of origin. No, Paddy Pimblett is an exciting fighter. Okay, a lot of people love him because he's brash, he's exciting, he's eccentric, all that stuff. But who is he really beating? He's another one of these guys that if he wins the fight, it's a big deal because he's taking on Michael Chandler. Chandler is still a physical powerhouse in the sport of MMA. Chandler did not win his shots to win a UFC gold, but he is still one of the most exciting fighters in the sport. He is still a guy who is a game fighter. The man has only lost one fight that did not go the distance since 2021. He lost to Justin Gaethje by decision. He beat Tony Ferguson by knockout. He lost to Dustin Poirier by submission. And then he lost to Charles Oliveira by decision. Oliveira, Poirier, Ferguson, Gaethje. 4 of the best fighters on the planet at the time he fought them. And he's not getting dominated by any of them. And frankly, you could argue that the submission lost by Poirier, which is a bad decision by Chandler. Paddy Pimblett, he dominated King Green in the last fight. King Green is like solid, above average. He's not like one of the best fighters on the planet. When Pimblett fought Tony Ferguson was past his prime. And then he beat Jared Gordon and Jordan Levitt. I'm supposed to get excited about those fights. Pimblett is box office, okay? A little bit like Sean O'Malley. But the difference is that Sean O'Malley is an anytime, anywhere dude. I don't know what Pimblett is because Pimblett basically has fought once a year the last couple of years. I understand part of that is injury and other mitigating circumstances. But Chandler, I think, is a much more game fighter than he is ready for. I like Chandler to win this fight outright. I think Chandler's wrestling and his physicality is going to dominate this fight. Plus 124 is the odds. Couple more fights I like on this card that are very interesting to me. I am very fascinated by Yair Rodriguez versus Patrico Pitbull Fieri. These are 2 fighters who are in very different points of their career. Patrico Pitbull Fieri used to be one of the greatest fighters in the world. Now, we're all trying to kind of figure out what he is at this point. He's no longer fighting in Bellator. He did the whole Bellator thing for many, many, many years. Now he's come to the UFC. This is his first UFC fight. And he's coming to the UFC well past his prime. 37 years old now. Does the Pitbull still have the firepower to deal with a younger fighter who himself is a former champion as well? Yair Rodriguez, interim UFC featherweight champion just 2 years ago. And Pitbull can say, well, I won championships recently in Bellator. And he can say that. He defended and won his last featherweight world championship fight. But before that, he had actually lost 2 fights at a different weight class. This fight at UFC 314, he's back at featherweight, the weight class he is best at. I think Pitbull wants to win this fight because I think he thinks he might have a shot at the belt. But if Rodriguez can win this fight, he can recalibrate his career and get back in the title contention as a former champ himself. So this is champ versus champ. Who can actually win? Who can actually dominate? And I think the greatest key is Pitbull going to stay patient or does he get risky? Does he get Rodriguez to make a mistake? Rodriguez can be a little bit anxious at times. And Pitbull is one of the best fighters on the planet at exposing guys when they get a little anxious. He lets you wear yourself out. He lets you put yourself in a position to let him finish the fight. We know that Rodriguez has lost 2 straight fights that did not go the distance. Is Pitbull more interested in taking him deep? Or is Patrico going to look to try to finish it early? Very interesting fight. I don't think this fight is going to go the distance personally. So, if you go to your favorite sports book, whatever it is, plus 105, it looks like, is no, it will not go the distance. It would have a little bit of fun. You could always go plus 175 for the TKO knockout. All right. Couple more picks for the UFC 314 breakdown for you before I let you guys go. Here on my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. I like Bryce Mitchell to win tomorrow because I think John Silva, for those who don't know, he missed weight at the weight cuts today. And he's doing a lot of talking. He's doing a lot of yip-yapping. I think he's doing too much talking. I think he's doing too much yip-yapping. And for a guy who missed weight, that's like a no-no in MMA. It's kind of like a sign of disrespect to your opponent. So I tend to think that this is a fight where I think Mitchell's come on a lot of criticism because of some of the things he's said and done over the years. He's I don't want to get into the whole thing, but the guy does not have the best taste in how to handle his business. Let's put it that way. I think Silva, though, is doing too much talking. I think Mitchell is going to want to get back on the winning track and put Silva in his place for missing weight. And as I mentioned earlier, Jim Miller plus 675 is the number I like most. If you want to get really interesting and you think that a Hooper-Miller fight is going to go to the ground at some point, look, it's either going to be Miller wins or this fight goes to decision. I think Miller is going to make him work, and it's not going to be easy for him. So it's plus 175 for a decision, is plus 675 for Miller to win, and it's plus 240 for Miller to have a close loss by decision. So a lot of opportunities for you to try to make a little bit extra something and value when it comes to UFC 314. Thanks again for Jim Miller for joining me today. Thanks to everybody who texted in, listening on 97.3 ESPN FM. Thank you for flipping over to the YouTube channel because you are the people who know where you get the real inside information each and every week right here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Thanks to 97.3 ESPN. I will be sitting in with Billy Schweim in the locker room this Sunday. So if you want to catch Billy's show, it's on 97.3 ESPN Sunday at 10 a.m. Or you can go look at Billy's YouTube channel. So if you want to catch that, you absolutely can. Thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, because the more feedback you give me, the more you support what I'm doing here, the more we can grow this platform. And the more we can grow this platform, the more opportunities will come for you to get what I believe is the most unique analysis that is not based on agenda, that's not based on demonizing people, that is not based on telling you you're stupid, because you're not stupid. I don't believe anybody is lesser because they have an opinion. Actions, not words, define somebody. Remember that, folks. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.